Hello, Islander families. Welcome to Curriculum Night 2020, where we will be doing this virtually. I'm Mrs. Ralph, and this is Algebra 1. Your student should have me in one of my classes. Not the way we normally get to see each other, but I'm glad we at least get to share some information. All right, so this year's agenda, while we're not together, I'm going to share a little bit about me and my goals for students, and then a few important information items that I think it'll be good for us to go over. If I don't touch base on something that you really have a question about, please don't hesitate to reach out. All right, so a little bit about me. I grew up in Southern California, in Pasadena, California, actually, where the Rose Bowl is. And I spent half my life there. Actually, I've now this year spent half my life in Southern California and half here in the Seattle area. I went to college at the University of Southern California for both undergraduate and graduate school. I have a master's degree in special education, which is where just what I used when I had my first job here at Island Park in 1993. So I have been teaching on Mercer Island since then. At Island Park, I was able to teach second and third grade. Great opportunities. And then after my second child was born in 1999, I took a little bit of time off. And then I went to Lake Ridge, where I was able to job share and teach PE for a little bit, which was a great opportunity while I was working in some cohort groups and doing math facilitations at districts around our area. And then in 2005, I came to Islander part-time and then eventually full-time, and never have regretted coming to middle school once I really got to know the students and making the connections with them. I have two of my own children who are now adults. Austin, my oldest, is almost 25 and just moved back to Southern California last week. He's actually living in San Luis Obispo and going to school. And my daughter, Lauren, is almost 21 and she attends Miami University in Ohio. And those are our two dogs, Bella and Emmett. And so we are empty nesters with our Weimaraners. And we just moved from Mercer Island, where we've lived for the last 15 years, to Issaquah. So your students will be hearing a lot about my adventures as I'm out this way now, and not quite as close to Islander as I've been so lucky to have been these last many years. All right, so my personal teaching philosophy. So part of this is toward just what we're doing now in algebra, and part of it's just me in general, but I really want my students to be successful, challenged, and to learn and grow while mastering concepts of mathematics and to gain confidence while learning. So it's really a goal, and it's challenging and accelerated math to balance that, but to really challenge them, but then I want them to gain confidence. And then I also want all students to build solid study habits, and that's something I really reiterate with them when we're together, and even more so now that we're apart. Critical thinking skills, logical reasoning, because that's going to be applicable to all disciplines, and it's going to be applicable to things they do in life. And that's really what we talk a lot about, especially while we're apart right now, during office hours, during our Zoom instructional blocks. And then most importantly, I want my students to know I care. And that's the hardest part while we're not together. The hardest part as we're apart is just letting them know I want to build that connection with them, and I want them to know I care. I want them to know I want to know more about them and who they are. So be looking for opportunities for them to get to know me a little bit more. We usually have lunch bunch in my classroom, and we'll be trying to do that via Zoom as well. Really want to get to know who your students are, who my students are, more than just a math student in my class. All right, whoopsie. All right, so algebra and Common Core. So Washington has adopted the Common Core standards for math. A way for me to just summarize the year would be to look at these 4 bullet points. And then each of those are worked on more in depth in a variety of ways, but we'll really be focused on seeing structures and mathematical expressions. And that's really in the topic we're looking at right now, and being able to see patterns and what's happening and the structures that exist, because then we use those structures and expressions to then reason with equations and inequalities. And we'll be working with a variety of equations and functions this year, from just linear equations to quadratic equations and absolute value equations and so on. And then we'll be creating and simplifying and solving expressions and equations throughout the year, as well as inequalities. And then we'll be working more in the spring with some polynomials and simplifying and rational functions. So this is just sort of an umbrella. And then within each of these areas, we delve in a bit deeper. And then with Common Core, there are 8 mathematical practices. There are 2 that we're really going to focus on, even if we're not together. And one is to attend to precision. So really, I'm working with the students to look at their mistakes, analyze their mistakes, use the answer key to make sense of an error. And oftentimes, if they ask me about a question and they send me a message on Schoology or they come to office hours, one of the first things I'll ask is, can you send me a picture of your work? And that helps me to help them to attend to that precision and not worry about is an answer right or wrong, but what did I do wrong? What could I have done more carefully? Because again, those patterns and those structures come up. And then number 7 is to look for and make use of structure. So as we build on all of our work this year with equations, we're really going to be making sense of what's the same in some of the functions and what's different, and to use those patterns and that structure to help solve equations as we delve into different ones. So if you want to learn more, you can get to the link to learn more about Common Core. But I think that's kind of enough for just a curriculum night presentation. I don't want to bore you on that. All right, some important things to know about Algebra 1 this year in my class. So communication, Schoology, and Zoom. This is a little bit different than if we were having regular, typical school in the building. But communication between families and myself, you'll get Skyward emails, usually monthly, just to keep you updated or to keep you in the loop. I really focus my communication with the students, but I just be looking for that. Make sure your Skyward email is up to date. And as far as communication with students, this year we have the Week at a Glance, as we're calling it, a WAG. There is that, but my primary means for them will be via Schoology. And so I can message the students individually. I message them as a period or a class, and then I message them as an entire group. So that's really one of the ways I keep in touch with them. Assignments and due dates are all posted on Schoology. And then we've also created a group, and we call it the Algebra group, and all of the students are a part of it. We made sure of that within the first day or 2 of school, and we use that as a group to communicate, as well as for me to send messages to them or reminders, but they can also message the group, and that's going to be incredibly helpful for them, because if they have a question and I'm not able to be reached right away, they can just message the group, and it's almost guaranteed someone will reply and provide that support, and that keeps us connected as a family as well. And then there's Zoom, and so we meet every Monday with every class, and then depending upon the period, I'll see them for 2 50-minute instructional blocks throughout the week. And that's a time for us to communicate as well. But there's also, we go back to Schoology and they can be messaging me through that. And then in addition to just our Zoom time together, which oftentimes will be small group work or activities with a few announcements, we can also really encourage the kids to come to office hours. So there are multiple opportunities, even though we can't be seeing each other face to face, but they can communicate with me daily. If they want to, I'm there. They just need to reach out. So that kind of touches base on that. And so with submissions, work is a little bit different this year, and then Skyward grades and codes. So for this trimester, the categories are a little bit different of how things are getting graded, and students have an expectation sheet you can review. It should be in their notebooks on page 2. But we'll be submitting assignments this current time with remote and distance learning, which is not easy with math, nor is it typical. I would normally just see work on a daily basis, and I'm able to give them feedback. So at least once a week, they'll be submitting a homework assignment, although homework should be getting done every day. And then we'll submit things to Schoology, and we're working on how to do that as a PDF. So that's something we'll be working on in the next couple weeks, so that things can be easily uploaded and printed if necessary. And we'll be doing quizzes via Schoology. We might be doing exit tickets and other activities, but the students will be submitting various activities. And so some will be graded, some won't. When you're looking in Skyward, it's going to look a lot, I would say, smaller than a typical year, but yet maybe more than you were used to seeing in the spring. If you have questions about any of the grades that you see, definitely speak to your student first. And then if you're still concerned, just you can email me, that's not a problem. And then pay attention to some of the codes, because if something's truly missing, I will put a missing code. If something is late, I'll put a late code. And if something's just not in there yet, it could be it's just not updated, or there's could be a variety of things. Right now we're balancing between Schoology and Skyward, and so be patient as we're doing it. It's going to look a little different, and when we get back, we'll probably change things up a little bit. But for now, just know that your students are submitting some of their math work. They are doing online assessments, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about the notebooks. Which brings us to our ISN. So we've been using these in my classroom for the last couple of years. They've been extremely beneficial to students. They're very interactive, but it's been a challenge to set these up while we're not together. And I'm encouraging students to come to office hours and I can help them. I'm trying to post pictures to help them. But students are going to be taking their notes in their notebook via videos that I'm recording and putting on Schoology. And while we're apart, students can use this notebook for so many things. It can help them with their homework. It can help them as they study. And as long as we're in remote learning, the students can use the notebooks for any assessment. So they're all open note quizzes, open note tests. So that encourages them, I'm hoping, to take the notes, watch the videos, add extra detail to their notebook because it's their resource. It's what they can use. And I promise you, they will find it helpful when we return and even when they get to high school. So that's something that might be a little bit different than what you're used to, but we rely on them and we really, really use them to benefit all of our learning. And then just want to touch base on the textbook. We've been using a Pearson online text for the last several years that's no longer available to us. As the text was updated. So we did send home a textbook. If you haven't picked one up, there is one for the students. And it's really for a resource at home, just to have that comfort of having the book. But knowing we would be moving away from the online version, almost all of our homework is coming from some of the work in the text, and I'll follow the chapters in order as they are in the text, but no one's going to have to use that per se. I just want it to be there as a resource. Some students really do like to look at that. If you haven't picked that up, it is waiting for you at the office. And if you are sharing a book right now, I will be reaching out to you when we are able to get a few more at school. And then finally, Algebra 1 is a high school course. If your student is in this class, they are accelerated 1 or 2 years, and they need to understand that as a high school course, their grades truly do matter. And my job is to help support them to succeed while they're in this class. I want to make sure that they know that, but that they take it seriously. And it really isn't a class where they can sort of choose what they want to do and when they want to do it. They want to really think about all the requirements, that the grades could go on their high school transcript if they so choose, and that maybe they're ready for it and maybe they're not. But it's a discussion we usually have when we're together, and we did talk about it, but it's something that maybe you could just reiterate at home. And so what'll happen, just so for your own knowledge, is in high school, when your students are either in 10th or 11th grade, what the changes is you should receive a letter that says, would you like this grade on your high school transcript? And then you can choose to have it or not. I really think the students want to think about the fact that I want to do as well as I can now and set those study habits and those behaviors, just setting them now, because Algebra 1 is such a foundational course for the Algebra 2 that they'll see in the pre-calculus and the things that are coming forward for them. So that doesn't cover everything for the year. There's so many things I'm sure you might have questions about, but please don't hesitate to reach out via email. You can always set up, we can do a phone call. I'm really still here, even though I'm not at school, and your students do know that. And if they were mine at home, I would say, go to office hours at least once a week, send a message and just ask a question at least once a week. I want to know that they're actively involved. I want to know they're engaged. And I really am enjoying seeing their faces at Zoom. So if you could just encourage them from your side to keep those cameras on and come early and share some stories, or stay after and share some stories, that's probably the part I miss the most. So that's it for 2020 Curriculum Night.